This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. This is a show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. We talk often on this program about the powerful images and messages we get in our dreams. And toward that end, I like to offer up this quote, which I think helps explain the beauty of dreaming. From Morpheus, the Greek god of dreams, REM dreaming effectively morphs our fundamental sense of self. But to have these incredible dreams, we have to be able to get a good night's sleep, in particular, to get into the REM stage of sleep. And what happens if we have trouble sleeping? What happens if we don't enter the REM stage at night? Are we actually harming ourselves by having dream loss? And if so, what can we do about it? We're going to explore all this with the author of the quote I started the show with, psychologist and sleep and dream specialist, Rubin Naiman. Rubin is a professor at the University of Arizona's Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine, a pioneer in dealing with solutions to sleep and dream disorders, and the author of several books, including Hush, a book of bedtime contemplations. Welcome to Dream Power Radio, Rubin.
Thank you, Debbie. Happy to be here.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And before we get into the subject of dream loss, I want to ask you, what got you interested in studying the effects of sleep on our dreams?
I'm always baffled by that question because I don't know why everybody isn't interested. I think of sleep and dreams as being really the roots of the tree of waking life. It's so much a part of who we all are. And of course, so striking that many of us don't pay attention to it. But the short answer, frankly, is when I was a teenager, I started experimenting with psychedelics. And that just blew the world right open for me and got me interested in psychology. And here I am.
And have been doing pioneer work on helping understand the whys behind sleep loss, dream loss, and all of that as well. So when it comes to dreams, it is generally accepted that most of our dreams occur during the REM stage of sleep. Without getting bogged down into all the scientific jargon surrounding that, in general terms, what happens to us during REM sleep?
Well, I think lots happens. For one thing, when we're sleeping and dreaming, our attention, our focus, our senses are no longer directed into the outer world. We come inward, we come into our deeper selves. Many of us don't know that territory well. We have difficulty sort of remembering, attending to, and bringing it back. But those of us who really do begin to connect with that find a vast universe inside that somehow parallels the outside. So REM sleep is a window. It's the largest picture window, if you will, that opens repeatedly through the night that allows us to look into the dream world. I'm one who believes that dreaming goes on all the time. You were hinting at that earlier. It's a little harder to see during the day. Dreams are like stars. People think they only come out at night. The truth is they're there all the time. We can't see them during the day because of the brightness of the daylight, of the sunlight, but the dream is always there. And the dream is most visible during REM sleep, the REM dream. But again, I believe that there's an underground stream of dreaming that goes on all the time.
Well, certainly during sleep, because REM isn't the only time that we have dreams at night, although they are the ones you would say?
They're the most vivid ones. There's been evidence for decades that there's another kind of mentation, a kind of dreaming that occurs in deep sleep. If you think of REM sleep as being a bright, vivid cumulus cloud against a deep blue sky, the other dreams are more like high, wispy cirrus clouds. They're clouds, but they're not really as visible or vivid as the other dreams.
Mm-hmm. And when we're in REM sleep, are there dreams during the entire cycle of REM sleep?
Yeah, I think, again, the dreams are there all the time. the extent to which we attend to them really depends on a lot of personal factors. But one interesting thing that happens, we live in a time where there's so much attention given to this notion that the body and the mind are one. And I don't believe that that's true, actually. I think they operate in unison. But what happens in REM sleep is interesting. And this sort of parallels old sacred traditions, this idea that the soul leaves the body. So the body goes into REM atonia. Our voluntary muscles, the muscles we move with, go offline in REM sleep, meaning if we awaken, we can feel paralyzed for a few seconds. But the mind, in one respect, leaves the body. So REM sleep, dreaming, is an out-of-body experience. Our experience is no longer limited to, we can touch without our hands, we can see without our eyes, hear without our ears. So we're no longer in the body. We can time travel, we can move through walls or shift identities. So that the mind, in a sense, leaves the body. But also, from the body's perspective, it's an out-of-mind experience, right? Because the mind, who we are, the psyche, the ego, sits on top of the body, as is the case in many of these mythic images like centaurs and Pan, where there's a human head on top of an animal body. The body is more natural, animal-like, and the body gets a break from the brain, if you will. The body gets a break from the mind. And we know that there's a disconnection between prefrontal cortex executive function and lower limbic sort of emotional and body related functions. So the body needs a break. The body and mind are a mixed marriage and they need time apart. And this happens in REM sleep.
Yes. And it also happens in sleep itself, though, right?
To some degree, but to a greater degree in REM sleep, actually. During sleep, we can still move. The body, the mind can be in the body and fluff the pillow or pull the covers off your partner or do something. But in REM sleep, we're paralyzed. The mind is no longer operating the body.
Mm-hmm. I see. Well, when we first started speaking, you had mentioned that you didn't know why everybody wasn't dreaming and paying attention to their dreams. It just didn't make sense. It didn't. But if we go back into, ancient times and societies all over the world, there was this great attention to dreams in the societies, both on an individual and on a collective basis. Mm-hmm. What happened to us? Why did we lose that?
It's a great question. I think the poetic or metaphoric answer is, I think we have shrunken, meaning our sense of self, our sense of the universe. I think we're caught up in excessive materialism, where we keep trying to explain anything and everything in terms of what goes on in the physical world, in the world of matter. The word matter is a synonym for what's important. It matters. And in humans, that comes down to the brain. We now more and more hear people talk about themselves and brain language. They talk about the mind in terms of the brain, and all of this effort to try to change the brain in order to change the mind. Again, I'm not arguing against the necessity of doing that, but I think it's a mistake to think that the mind is the brain, and that shrinks consciousness down to the brain. And nowadays we're seeing a resurgence of curiosity and interest in psychedelics, which I think are really a kind of a chemically mediated big dream process, which I think it's heartening because it brings us back to this idea of expanding ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into that in a while after this, but I wanted to ask you, though, in one of your articles that I read, you were talking about the way we use language and even how we sort of devalued the word dream by associating it with material things like, oh, it's my dream to get a new house or a new car or a new job or whatever. It's the material thing as opposed to what it is for us and ourselves and our own dreams in more the metaphysical, physical sense. Expand on that a little.
Yeah, you're suggesting it's one of the more common uses of the word dream in our culture. The American dream refers to a house, right? Or, sort of a certain economic stature in which you can buy a house. And not to minimize the importance of that in life. It's important, but it is an interesting use of the word dream. And today, even in the sciences, we're beginning to look at the dream as the way we look at natural resources. And God knows we've kind of torn the planet apart, digging for all kinds of natural resources, from metals to precious metals to water and on, and chopping down forests. But we're doing the same thing with dreaming. If you think of the dreamscape, it's an internal parallel to the landscape. And what's happening now, which disturbs me, is there's a lot of very sophisticated and very well-funded operations to hack the dream. And really, one of my colleagues, a prominent dream researcher, recently had a contract with a beer company and used dream-like inception language during the Super Bowl to encourage people to dream about and then buy a product. And this can be done. The dreaming mind is really powerful. But I think we need, in the same way we need to be more respectful for the landscape and natural resources, we need to realize that we can't really tamper with the dreamscape without hurting ourselves. The dreaming mind, the unconscious, the collective unconscious, is intelligent. It's not just a mechanism. It's not just brain function. There's wisdom. And I think part of the problem today, a big part of the problem, is we are reticent around respecting the unconscious. In fact, I think to varying degrees, people are afraid of their own unconscious. They're afraid of the unconscious in others. If you look at Freud, in short, Freud believed that the deepest part of the personality was, in German, he called it das Es. In English, it's the id. And the id is, gosh, it's harsh. It's this vast repository of negative, terrible, aggressive, competitive, selfish impulses. Freud believed that was the core of who we are. And even the phrase beat the devil out of, which many of us are familiar with, that phrase comes from old Christian child-rearing textbooks. The belief was children were born with demonic influence. So these are two of many examples where, oh my God, you can't trust your unconscious. And that's where the dream lives, and that's where the dream comes from. So people are reticent about that. And one of the ramifications you were hinting at earlier, and I've done a lot of work around, is that we are in the middle of an epidemic of dream loss. It may well be that most of what we call sleep loss turns out to be dream loss. In fact, there's evidence for that. And we don't call it that, we call it sleep loss. And it has really profound ramifications for consciousness, for mood, for creativity, and I think for our spirituality.
And it could also have even physical ramifications also, right?
Undoubtedly, we're beginning to see a relationship between dream loss and increased chronic inflammation. We know that kids that don't dream well are more likely to put on weight. It probably affects our immune system. We're just beginning to learn this about dreaming.
So as a researcher, what do you see as being the causes of dream loss?
Well, I think so much of it is built into culture. So we are a culture that relies, I think, excessively on mind-altering substances. And I say excessively because I think there's a legitimate use for conscious use to expand our sense of self. But it's astounding when you look at the statistics about how many Americans drink huge amounts of alcohol, in excesses of the amount that the AMA or public health officials would recommend. Millions of Americans drink 4, 5, 6, 8, 10, 12 or more drinks a day. Millions, many, many millions. Alcohol, we call it spirits because I think people drink because they want to alter their consciousness, which is positive. But alcohol dramatically interferes with REM sleep. And people don't like hearing this, but the truth is that cannabis, like alcohol, which can actually help you relax and fall asleep, but then consequently or subsequently also interferes with REM sleep. So lifestyle, the substances we use, so many medications, commonly used medications. In fact, most psychiatric medications, tranquilizers, benzodiazepines, most antidepressants, most psych medications around the world to varying degrees interfere with REM sleep. So our substances, our medications, and then the last part of it is the brain prioritizes deep sleep, true sleep, over REM sleep, which means if you don't have enough time in your night to get both, you will get sleep, but you will lose out on dreaming. And most awakenings occur in the latter third of the night or early morning. So those awakenings don't cut out sleep, they cut out dreaming. You put all this together, and we're living in a world where people are dreamless.
Which is a sad state to be in. But on that note, we have to take a short break. We are speaking about dreaming and even the lack of dreaming with Rubin Naiman, and we'll be right back. If you're not pleased with the trajectory of your life, the time to begin your own personal transformation is now, and your dreams can help pave the way. How? By tapping into your unvoiced confidence. What is unvoiced confidence, you say? It's the acceptance of your abilities and qualities. It's a state of mind coming from liking and even loving yourself, and feeling free to say or do anything you want without concern for the judgment of others. You were born confident, but may have had it chipped away little by the negative self-beliefs you've picked up over the years. If you're looking for the heightened energy, clarity of thought, and the feeling of being more alive that comes from self-confidence, you can rediscover it by paying attention to your dreams. Need some help doing this? Go to my website, thedreamcoach.net, and sign up for my complimentary dream discovery session. I can help show you how your dreams can help you return to the confident person you were always meant to be. Again, go to thedreamcoach.net, thedreamcoach.net.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're talking about sleep loss, dream loss, and what we could do about it with sleep researcher Rubin Naiman. Rubin, you were talking before about sleep loss, and actually dream loss really affects us, and alcohol and cannabis and drugs and some sorts all play an effect on this. But the irony is that if we paid attention to our dreams, we can get those same benefits without the drugs and the impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I think really one of the reasons we're drawn toward excessive substance use is we're trying to reconnect with a deeper, richer, more expansive part of ourselves and part of lives. There is something dreamy to being drunk.
Well, there is, and you do get those effects, the negative effects of over drinking or over smoking or overdosing. But people do it for a reason. They've done it for a reason for centuries. So that is true. But is there a way to regain our normal sleep cycle and have REM dreams without a drastic change in lifestyles?
No. The key part of your question is without a drastic change in lifestyle. I don't think so. I think we need to recognize that the way we live our waking daily lives has a profound effect on our night lives. We can't just throw a switch at the end of the day. A lot of people try this now. They dim the lights, they pop some melatonin, they do a little yoga nidra, and all those things are fine, but it's not just that simple. Part of the problem is that we as a culture also were hyper aroused. So arousal in medicine refers to being awake, but we are excessively awake. We're too awake. The reason most people can't sleep is not because they're not sleepy enough. It's because they're too awake. And this ties into something I've written about and writing more about. We are a wake-centric culture. And what I mean by that is we live in, it's kind of a matrix that we don't even know we're in. I call it the wake-trix. It's the dome that the Truman Show took place in. We really believe that there's this palpable limit to life and it's waking. And so we look at sleeping and dreaming as being secondary and subservient to waking life. That, the only reason we sleep, the only reason we dream is to make us better waking. The presumption there is that waking is the gold standard for consciousness. This is where it's at. This is the primary way of being conscious. And if waking is not modulated, if it's not tempered rhythmically by rest, by sleep, by dreams, it just spins out, which it's done. Life today is like living inside of an AM radio. Everything is sort of fast. Everything goes faster and higher and quicker. People are thinking faster and talking faster and in a greater hurry. And it's harder and harder to slow down. So that's wake centrism. The other part of this is, from that perspective, when most people do dream and they want to understand or interpret their dreams, it's interesting what they do. This is like if the dream was a fish living in water, we dive into the water at night, we grab the fish and we pull it out of the water and we toss it down on a wooden plank and carve it up to see what it's like. But we're not going to really understand the dream outside of the water of dreaming. We keep thinking that we're going to harvest valuable understanding, information, and resources from the dream, pulling it into the waking world. And there's truth to that, but there's a deeper and a richer truth that we will gain more by learning to swim in the world of dreams, letting that world expand us and teach us, not just pulling ideas and experiences from that back into waking.
Well, if you're not having a lucid dream where you're aware of the dream, how do you do that when you're in that state?
Well, I think I've been doing dream interpretation with patients for years, and I think there's great value in interpreting a dream. But I've come to believe in recent years that more important than knowing the meaning of a dream is knowing that dreaming is meaningful. We don't have to understand it. And so there's a certain, for lack of a better term, a kind of faith that we develop in dreaming. Lucid dreaming is interesting, but it's challenging. I think the way most people practice lucid dreaming is it's like pulling the fish out of the water, and they bring excessive waking world values into the dream, right? I call it wake centrism because it's like what we used to call ethnocentrism. We go out, anthropologists would go out to study other cultures and we go, oh my God, they're so weird. Look at their language or their tools or their rituals. But we judge them from the perspective of our culture. We judge dreaming from the perspective of waking, and it's a huge mistake.
So it brings me to this question, though. If you are having a normal sleep cycle and you're having REM dreams, but you don't remember them, is that helpful or beneficial?
I think it's always beneficial to some degree, undoubtedly, to dream, to have REM dreams and other dreams. To better recall or remember dreams is it takes a couple of things. One is it takes willingness. Takes intention. And there's a very simple and effective practice, and it's about how we awaken in the morning. Too many people, most of us awaken with an alarm clock. We start the day in an alarming manner, which, it's sort of like starting a horse race that goes off, the bullet shoots, and we run. But remembering dreams requires that we really reconsider an unusual, mysterious state of consciousness that we call groggy. We dismiss grogginess. In fact, the word groggy comes from the English rum drink, grog. We think we wake up drunk, let's drink some coffee, throw some water on our face. But grogginess is so unusual because it is a mix of sleep, dreams, and waking. It's actually a hybrid consciousness. The Hindu chant Aum, A-U-M, Om or Aum, actually is made up of three sounds, Ah, which mean waking, dreaming, sleeping. It's really interesting. They believe that if you bring those three together, so for most of us, grogginess is really a spiritual experience. We remember our dreams by not dismissing grogginess, lingering in grogginess for just a few minutes when we awaken in the morning, and not chasing the dream. The dream lives in a world of receptivity, of yin, the feminine, if you will. And if we charge at the dream, we run into there with our butterfly nets and we're going to capture and pull it out, it will escape us. If we linger peacefully in a receptive, groggy state, dream images will start to come toward us. We'll see a fish float by, or we'll see a tree or whatever. And then the other step is to bridge that to waking. We can do that by keeping a dream journal. We can talk to our partners if they're receptive to this. about dreaming. So we begin to bridge. And then over time, the doorway between the dream world, the dream and sleep world, and the waking world remains open.
Well, on a very practical level, because like you said, most people or a lot of people use alarm clocks to wake up. How do you put that into a practice? If you are one of those people who up till now has been using an alarm clock, but you are interested in this,
Yeah.
how do you get it?
There's a very complex, challenging solution to the alarm clock. It's called go to bed earlier. The bottom line is, if we awaken routinely with an alarm clock, we are never getting enough sleep. We're snipping off the end of our dreams. It's sort of like being in a movie theater. In the last 5 or 10 minutes of the movie, they turn the projector off. I think it's very frustrating. So yeah, if we go to bed earlier, we'll get enough sleep. But that seems simple, but it also means changing a certain way of being during the day, slowing down, not getting everything done, valuing rest, sleep, and dreams as much as we value waking.
Mm-hmm. And I said it all goes down to what we talked about at the beginning, is believing that our dreams are important and mean something.
Yeah. And I think when we treat them as if they're important, we begin to realize how important they are.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of that, is there perhaps one dream that you've had that you consider, a great dream for you that's had a powerful effect on you?
I don't know that I could single out one. And frankly, I think that the amount of drama in a dream, like the amount of drama in life, may or may not be correlated with depth. I think sometimes the most powerful changes that occur, like a change in season, a change we're now going from winter to spring, or even a change at the end of the day when the sun sets, they're gradual. I mean, sometimes obviously there are these dramatic changes. So I think trusting all of our dreams, trusting that there's a deep intelligence inside of us. So I don't pay that much attention to dramatic dreams. And you mentioned the waking dream before, which is something I'm very interested in. It's being able to be in the waking world and look at it, recognize the dream quality in it. And along those lines, so many people in recent years talk about recognizing signs. When you fall into a dream mind space, you begin to see subtle signs that you might miss in the world. And for me, I've been doing this for years and years and years, and I'm not sure what it's like for other people, but there's no doubt I get these clear signs over and over and over every day, and most of them say stop. I take them as personal messages. I think it's not a coincidence that we're advised to really slow down, and that's the treatment for our hyperarousal.
Well, I hope you don't slow down in working on sleep and dream issues.
Well, thank you.
Important area of study that we must have more information on. I just have time for one final question, which is, how can people find out more about you and your work?
I have a website. Actually, the easiest way to find the website is to Google my first name, Rubin, and the word sleep or the word dream. And the website's drnaiman.com. A lot of my writing is available on the website. I've written for years for HuffPost and other places. So there are articles there, my books, audiobooks, and much more than you'll ever need is available there.
Well, thank you so much for being on Dream Power Radio today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, we've been speaking with sleep and dream specialist Rubin Naiman. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If you have, please tell all your friends and drop a positive review on your podcast site. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio.